Are you struggling to make decks and dying to powered up enemies? Or just getting tired of finding rare events only to discover it's this worthless idiot? What if I told you, thanks to the latest dev update, now you can farm whatever you want, wherever you want, and have much higher consistency in save data farming? Cosmic here, welcome to the channel, and today I wanted to cover all the major changes on how to farm save data in the post-patch world, and I just want to take a couple days to figure it out myself, test it, and all that good stuff, and honestly put a couple different topics into one video that you might have missed out on, and a couple helpful tips. So if you want to support the channel and videos like this one, make sure to like and subscribe, as it does help us out a ton. But otherwise, we're going to dive right in, and I want to break this up ultimately into three separate sections. First, we're going to talk about how the devs change save data farming and why the new method is definitely going to be better for the vast majority of players, why you should reset your zero system if you haven't already, and keep in mind, yes, this is going to be once you have actually fully cleared it one time. And then lastly, the pros and cons between the two different methods that I'm going to mention. So up first, what we really want to talk about is how did the devs change? Well, the good news is that now when we go into the zero system, we have the option to have the dimensional tunnel or the chaoses that we can select. So as you would normally do once you get this leveled up, you would go into merge, you would pick your difficulty. Now you'll notice that this does cost a lot of resources, which we will get back to later. You're going to merge, and I tested this quite a bit, so I've spent, I think, 30,000 orbs now at this point testing this. So I've spent a lot of resources, and I have not found a chaos here that would appear that does not have the dimensional tunnel event, this purple text that they've added. And this is really important because as long as it has this tag, anytime you go in, that will now count towards seasonal data. And I did test this quite a bit. So one of the big questions that I always got on stream, and just as people are coming by and want to know how I was farming, what was I farming for, and I've gotten a lot of questions about why I often will skip the tunnel, especially if it's not a character that I really want the forbidden card. And this could have been a drawback because in the Discord, I was noticing a little bit of mixed opinions on if it counts or not, or some issues other people had. So I went in, I tested myself. I literally just ran a couple chaoses up to the first checkpoint, left, and it was able to save. So what's really nice about this is that as long as you're able to roll a decently high tier of the save data value, you of course can have up to 130 points as an example, which can be nice, and it's definitely good enough to get you started. But there is some pros and cons to this that we're going to mention a little bit later when we go in the side-by-side comparison. But I do want to stress here up front, and just in terms of what to expect and how this has changed. So yes, if you haven't been doing the zero system up until this point, the good news is that you can go back in, get seasonal data while doing this, and also get those really important exploration rewards that we've talked about previously, especially Dimensional Cube being a very nice one to pick up from Blue Pot if you want to build that out. Now, what's also important to note as you're going through this, right, we got to talk about upgrading the zero system. So one of the other questions I've gotten a lot while on stream is, how do you have three options at the start, or the divine blessings as I just always call it, or the divine representation upgrade protocol? So this choice at the very end of the zero system upgrade path is how you get those three options at the start, and notably stronger effects, which is how we always do the double removal on stream. But you might have caught it in the intro, but what about those really annoying enemies, and how can I get them out of my chaos experience? I want to make sure that they're not blocking any difficult paths as we're trying to go through. Well, the good news is once you completely max this out, you can do the reset all option, and it'll refund you all of those orbs, which means we can now skip over some of these nodes that have caused us a lot of problems in the past. And well, unfortunately, we finally died to one on stream just to some bad luck. It is what it is, but for those that just want to make it a little bit easier, you can get all the advantages of zero system without having to deal with the negative, if we're being very honest with ourselves, because those rare species, the ones that are the powered up, they get like the debuffs that eat one of your cards, they have regenerative, they have the heavy, which increases cards. They're just the guys that you hate to fight, and you probably always skip them anyways after you've maxed this out once, because you do not need the extra chaos orbs or the white fragments or anything of that nature once you get to this point. So again, I do want to stress that you do have to go all the way through, upgrade this all the way. Once you get that final upgrade, slam that reset all as quickly as you can and make sure that you are not selecting the rare species tag as you're going through this, because this will be the stronger monsters that have the debuffs or other effects that are just there to make your life absolutely miserable. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about, right, with the Codex, and then what about Lab Zero, right? That's the big thing that a lot of people are probably farming right now, myself included, because I still like Lab Zero, spoiler, as we'll talk about personally, but there is something that I want to take a moment to mention here before we get into the actual comparison, is that yes, you still want to make sure that you are doing your weekly progress where it says 8,000 out of 8,000, so you can still get your resources. So do keep in mind, this is just gonna be about players who are trying to either optimize decks, or they're just trying to find that one save that they really want, they can go test without having to like really try super hard in the Lab Zero. You're constantly resetting, trying to get the double save or double removal for the best save possible. Yes, you can make those super awesome high roll Mika decks like I've gotten on stream, but is it really worth it, right? That is the point of this video. Now, of course, you know me, I love having a graphic, so I'm gonna just post it up here, just a very quick overview of kind of the pros and cons for each one of these, and I am gonna talk about these in a bit more detail while I just have some gameplay up in the background. But I think there is a discussion point to be had here for the vast majority of players. If your time is sensitive and you just want to get the enjoyment of testing out a couple different teams and being able to clear all content in the game, then honestly, just go back into Zero System, make sure that you can get those very easy to farm decks, and just have a complete experience with it. I will probably test this in the future, and I've done it with worse decks technically at this point, but I really want to stress that, especially as we think about the new challenge, again, at the time of the recording here, the Great Rift, you have to get the 5,000 points for the rewards that you can get on a weekly level. And yes, it is cumulative, but for people who are maybe short on time or just want to get this done as quickly as possible, you can absolutely go in with a 2 of Shadow Reload, 2 of the upgrade for Cassius for quest completion, right? And be fine. Now, yes, it'd probably be ideal to have a third source of water with a draw or just extra draw epiphanies in general, but I really want to stress that at least up front, and this is now getting into the actual breakdown that I wanted to talk about, copy events in the Zero System are, while not 100% chance, there is like a 90% chance, it feels like, to get not only a copy event, but one that lets you select the card that you want, meaning you could always get exactly what you want, compared to Lab Zero, which is going to be more of, hey, I was able to get super lucky on the first boss and I just happened to copy it again a couple more times, right? It is extremely frustrating to even try to build a 2 of copy deck in Lab Zero, where in Zero System it is quite easy. Another really important positive here, or at least for at the time of recording, as I'm sure this is going to play a bigger role as we get to the next boss that will unlock in Great Rift, but there's more build options for gear. If you look at the leaderboard right now, one of the best Tressa builds is relying on gear from Blue Pot, which is super important that, yes, you can get seasonal save data and you have more options to gear up. Now, this also is really nice for some of the other conditional pieces that you might want to farm from certain chaos areas. So just at a high level positive, I do love this, that allows us to get additional builds for characters that we might have otherwise been closed off of, because Lab Zero has a very, very limiting pool. And then some negatives that I do want to stress here is that it is extremely expensive to run Zero System if you are trying to loop it for either a certain planet, if you want to target one like Blue Pot, or if you are just trying to quit early, you will have to burn a lot of units. For some players, that might be the breakpoint in and of itself, because you don't have those orbs to spend because you are still upgrading your Zero System, or you are stuck in a spot where you've upgraded a bunch of characters and now unfortunately you don't have any units, right? And that second negative that I added there is that it is just very luck based to find the right chaos that you want. In case of the Blue Pot, I actually wasted something like 1,000 orbs on stream trying to find not only just a Blue Pot, but a usable Blue Pot. And well, it struggled a little bit, right? So How about some positives? Where does Lab Zero or Laboratory Zero just a little bit better? Well, the thing that I like the most about Laboratory Zero, as someone who is trying to invest a lot of time and trying to get, better decks on average in terms of the overall build quality, not in terms of the time investment, right? In terms of consistency, I should stress. You have very, very fast reset times. If you didn't get the mutant sample, you can back out. If you didn't get the right divine, back out immediately, no problem. You got to the first boss, didn't copy the right card, guess what? You can quit again. There is no penalty for getting out early from Lab Zero, which does make it a great choice if you are trying to loop and really high roll and again, make those 4 of copy Mika decks that are just so insane to watch pull off. Now, in the same vein of that, I do have to stress that you get better divine starts. For those that have caught the stream, I am someone who will live and die by the double removal start because it allows us to remove not only one card from the character that is going to be the strip them all the way down to their basics so we can have the max amount of copy chances, it also helps us remove a card from our target farming character. So if I was running Mei Lin, I would get to remove her shield card right from the start. And that does help us build better decks from a deck thinning standpoint, where as you're going through the Zero system, you will find a couple times where it's like, wow, I just don't have as many removal events as I would really like. So it is a bit harder to find the right copies if you are trying to rely on a copy from that first boss. Again, the biggest trade-off here is that you do have the option to just select one while you're running the Zero system, where it does all pure RNG in Lab Zero. But with enough removal, and especially if you have Veronica and Mika, honestly, it is pretty easy to farm and try to get that first copy with I would say even average luck start, as long as, again, you have those right conditions. And then the other positive I want to stress here is that there are higher save data limits for at least what I could tell. Again, I have spent a ton of orbs trying to reset, and the highest that I have been able to see for the Zero system is tier 13. So in just this one example that I keep going back to for the Mika deck that I was able to get, and I only mention it so much because I got it more recently, right? This was only possible in Lab Zero. And while no, it's not perfect, having the 4 divines certainly does help significantly when it comes to building that insane Cassius Tressa comp that everyone wants to try. So of course, that is a consistency versus maybe slightly higher cap consideration, but the big elephant that we have to talk about in the room that I stressed up front is that it feels even worse now to run Lab Zero compared to before the patch. And honestly, it is just because of the extra event where you get the ambushes into your deck, and they made it worse to try and hit the copy event. So for that reason alone, especially if you're someone who has limited time, I just cannot recommend Lab Zero anymore for farming save data. I do think overall it is going to be a waste of time, especially for those who are very limited and maybe only have enough time to do, say, their weekly farm and then maybe a couple on the weekend, right? If you have those couple extra chaos runs, just go into Zero system and you're gonna have a much better time. Again, because I really want to stress that for all content in the game, you really only need 2 of, or at most 3 of copies of cards, and those are really easy by comparison to complete in the Zero system. And then it was a little bit of a joke there at the end, but I mean, I still gotta make the comment, right? 0 epiphanies, 0 copies, 0 sanity. I don't know what happened, but it feels like you can now just get absolutely 0 upgrades in an entire run for your target character. Now, yes, some of this is just gonna be bad RNG at the end of the day, and based on game mechanics, you are supposed to play on Nightmare to have increased epiphany odds, but that somehow still feels worse compared to where it was even before the patch, or how Zero system, feels compared to the Laboratory Zero experience. So it is just overall frustrating to see that discrepancy. So wrapping things up here, this is my big takeaway at the very end. If you're someone with limited time who wants to just clear content and build consistent decks that are good enough for everything that's currently in the game, then just farm Zero system. If you are instead someone who wants to chase the top 100 of the leaderboard by perfecting the most absolute peak save data possible, then yeah, unfortunately Lab Zero is still going to be the main choice given the fast restart times as well as slightly higher save data, which can matter quite a bit. Chaos Zero Nightmare in the end is a game about deck building with your preferred teams. The Great Rift might detract from some of that fun while certain team comps greatly overshadow others from time to time, but it's important to remember that this data is seasonal, meaning in only 5 more weeks at the time of this recording, it's all gonna go away and we're gonna have to start over from zero again and nothing to go with, right? So I leave you with this one question. Are you still having fun while trying to farm save data? That's going to do it for today's video. I hope you found this breakdown and discussion helpful as you're on your save data journey and planning out your runs in Chaos Zero Nightmare. But that's going to do it for today. So until next time, my friends, stay safe, stay hydrated, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.